Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you all are doing well today. We're going to be looking at another one of our pieces. Today is a really beautiful Universal Genève Golden Shadow from 1965. This is one of the first Golden Shadows produced by Universal Genève. It's the reference 166110. A really beautiful example of this model and reference, but also a very historically significant piece for a brand that I think is really competes on the vintage side, competes with all of the brands that you would associate with sort of high horology, and I think this is a really beautiful example. I'm very excited to get into it. The history of this piece is really great. The trajectory of Universal Genève that this watch sort of stands for is significant. So very excited to get into this piece with you. So while I'm going to stop rambling on, and I will flip perspectives so you can take a look at this watch. The watch industry, like all product industries, is filled with innovation. But not far behind innovation comes competition. A brand that stood at the forefront of innovation, as well as being a fierce competitor, was Universal Genève. Not only has the brand produced exceptional watches during its history, it has also created products that took first prize. Many are aware that in 1955, Universal Genève created the caliber 215 movement. This movement was a new self-winding movement with an oscillating weight integrated into the movement. Commonly, this is called a micro-rotor because essentially the oscillating weight is a smaller version of the rotor that rotates on top of the movement of automatic watches to provide power to the mainspring. The movement was patented by the manufacturer and used in many of their watches, the most iconic being the Polerouter, famously designed by Gerald Genta. An extremely important part of the company's history, though, is what they realized in 1966 at Basel World. A perfect watch to tell the story is this Universal Genève Golden Shadow from 1965. So, after a successful launch of the Polerouter, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for you here. After a successful launch of the Polerouter, I'm gonna also set the hands just to be a little bit better for you visually. After successful launch of the Polerouter, the manufacturer decided there were additional barriers that they needed to be pushed from an innovation perspective. So they released their Shadow line of watches, the brand's response to the fiercely competitive ultra-thin wristwatch. They had three lines: the White Shadow, which was cased in stainless steel; the Gilt Shadow, which was cased in gold-plated steel; and the Golden Shadow, cased in solid gold, which you see is the piece in front of you. These watches, launched in 1965 and debuted in 1966 at Basel World, were the world's thinnest self-winding watches, measuring in at a thickness, if you want to call it that, and as you can see, of 2.3 millimeters. They held this record until 1978 when Lemania introduced the caliber 2100. So the Golden Shadow that you see in front of you is likely one of the original Golden Shadows that was ever produced. The serial number on the case dates to 1965, which was one of the first watches. Meaning it was one of the first watches to come out of the watchmaker from the Golden Shadow line. It's likely that this case was made prior to Universal Genève releasing this, and obviously it was the movement was married up with this case and looks pretty great. As you can see, this Golden Shadow has a case that is in solid yellow gold and is 34 millimeters in diameter. The lugs are thin, and The lugs are thin and quite long, which makes it sit a little bit larger and pretty comfortably on the wrist. The case is in fairly good condition with the reference numbers on the case back. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but on the pictures in our article, you'll be able to see it. The reference number and serial number are still visible on the case back down here. What's really cool about the case back is there are some spots of oxidation, which is always great to see on yellow gold. I think it gives it an additional sort of flair. Next to the crown, you can actually still see the hallmark. Although it's likely that the case is being polished because the hallmark isn't, super distinct. So this case has likely seen a polishing wheel. The dial features a plain white background that has aged nicely since the 60s. It has Roman numerals for hour markers, which gives the watch a little bit of a dressier feel. Like the hour markers, the Universal Genève name, logo, and model type are all printed on the dial, as well as the automatic that you see here at 6 o'clock. Golden Shadows featured a variety of case designs and dial layouts. Some feature the model name at 12 o'clock. At 6 o'clock. But this one obviously has the name at right under the Universal Genève name. It's the reference 166110. This is actually the third series of this reference, with the first and second series having a different dial layout. The first and second series have the Golden Shadow and automatic are swapped compared to the third series. Obviously, this case being produced as one of the first cases to house this, to be part of this line, it kind of didn't make sense to me that this would be a third series. However, I did a little bit of research and found that the first and second series of Golden Shadows, the serial numbers, it's likely that the production of each of these series happened very close to one another, or possibly at the same time, because I've found other series 3s with serial numbers that came before series 1s. So likely that it happened around the same time, or like I alluded to, at the same time. Before we kind of move on to the movement, which I think is a staple of this watch, I want to speak about the case. There's some interesting research that can be found on the case back of this watch. So on the case back, one can find some interesting stamps that tell us more about the watch. Naturally, one sees the Universal Genève logo stamped and the 18-karat gold stamp. It also has the yellow gold Helvetia stamp, which is the Swiss hallmark for 18-karat gold. It also features the Geneva key hallmark with the number 26 inside, which is an important detail. The 26 indicates that this case was made by Ponti Gennari and Cia in Geneva. This Geneva-based watchmaker was known for making cases and bracelets for brands like Patek Philippe as well as Universal Genève. Well-known case maker Jean-Pierre Hagman actually worked for Ponti Gennari. So this information likely points to the fact that this case was created in Switzerland. The movement also doesn't have any import stamps used to import this watch, or used by brands to import watches to the U.S. market. So it's likely that the movement was not exported from Switzerland, and so it's likely that this was the case, movement, and the construction of this watch all happened in Switzerland, and this may have been sold in the European market. All right, so moving on to the extremely important part about this watch, which is the movement. The watch is running on the famous caliber 66 movement. As alluded to previously, this caliber was a record-breaking movement. It was launched in 1966 with the introduction of the Golden Shadow and was the world's thinnest self-winding movement until 1978, measuring at a thickness of 2.3 millimeters. The movement is extremely beautiful to look at. There's some images on Instagram if you wanna take a look at it. but it has the beautiful Geneva stripes, or Côte de Genève, on the movement, and the bidirectional micro-rotor is incredibly beautiful to look at. The micro-rotor really is one of the most striking parts about looking at this movement. The thinness of it is pretty incredible to look at and almost takes you by surprise when you see it in the watch. As I mentioned before, the movement does not appear to be stamped with any import markings, so it's likely that the watch was sold to a different market other than the US. Universal Genève also created the caliber 67, which was the same as the caliber 66, only incorporated a date function into the watch. Some Golden Shadow watches use this movement, so one can find some variety in the complications used for those specific models. This model comes on this really nice brown strap, which I think fits really nicely with the yellow gold. It also sort of gives the watch a little bit of a warmth to its appearance, which I think makes it overall more attractive. I'll put it on my wrist so you can see how the watch looks on the wrist. As you can see, it's a extremely good looking watch. As I mentioned, the thin lugs really allow the watch to sit quite nicely on the wrist. You can see it extends quite a ways out, which I think gives it a nice little look. And again, super thin on the wrist, which makes it so incredibly comfortable. So it's pretty impressive to hold this watch in your hands and have it on your wrist. There's a ton of historical significance that this line of watches, as well as its ultra-thin movement, play for Universal Genève. Not only were brands competing against one another, but they were also competing against themselves. How they could continue to innovate and push boundaries of what they were capable of was what they were really focused on. And to take their innovative micro-rotor, couple it with an ultra-thin movement, and place it in a watch that was actually designed by Gerald Genta takes a certain amount of precision and poise. And the end product that they were able to produce and the feat that Universal Genève was able to achieve, I think really made it worth it. And another beautiful vintage watch example from an outstanding manufacturer. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Universal Genève Golden Shadow. As always, there will be an article on lifeonthewrist.com that you can read about this piece, read about its history, and see some pictures of the piece. As I mentioned, I think this is a watch that stands for a ton when it comes to the history of Universal Genève. It's a beautiful example and combines so many different innovations that I think the company had. And it's an absolute pleasure to have on the wrist, an absolute pleasure to cover on lifeonthewrist.com. As always, we will have an article, as I mentioned, but if you want to see some pictures of this watch, as well as the caliber 66 movement that it's running on, there will be some pictures on our Instagram if you want to check it out. I highly encourage you to go there and see it. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend who might be interested in watches. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this piece. I'm very excited to jump in next week on one of the next pieces that we have in line that we covered, 2 videos ago. So if you want to see the videos we're going to be doing, you can check out the watches there. So excited to do that. Stay tuned for all of that. If you wouldn't mind liking this video, it really does help me out. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.